Hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. Hope you're doing well. And today we are don't laugh at that. That's just my intro. You're laughing because that's how he says it right in the video.
I've heard it like twice before.
Yep. Already full of giggles is my guest, a main brain over at Third Man headquarters in Nashville, Tennessee. It's Ben Blackwell. How you doing, dude?
I'm doing splendid.
Good. I first met Ben when I was out on tour in Nashville. I was performing at the End, quite possibly the scummiest, punkiest place I had ever been in my entire life. It was beautiful when we met, and I told you that I was doing some kind of performance or whatever. You assumed it was like musical or whatever at first, and I said, "Oh no, it's a speaking engagement thing." And you said, "Where is it?" And I said, "It's at the End." And your immediate reaction was, "The End?" You know, you instantly had like a severely puzzled look on your face, and I was like, "Oh, what does that mean? What does that?"
The End is not known for great moments in oratory history. Let's just put it that way.
I had a great time. There was a guy there who showed up with a decapitated mannequin head, who was easily the tallest guy there. So in the back of the place,
How is my grandpa doing?
oh, he's he's doing great. He was doing very good. Yes, his ominous shadowy figure was coming closer and closer to the stage as the show went on, and then by the end of the show, he was like hanging over the side rail, holding the mannequin head over the side, and yeah, it was a good time. It was a good time.
Keeping Nashville weird.
But while I was down there, I had some time before the show. I decided just out of the blue, I wanted to come down to Third Man and just kind of see the store and see what was up, and maybe happen into a tour or something. And it just so happened that you met me in the just outside of the bay doors there when I was trying to throw something away in the dumpster and not get caught. And you said
You got caught hard.
I got caught hard. Well, honestly, like I know some people are defensive and passionate about their dumpster space. You paid for that space. You don't want some Joe Schmo just walking up and throwing some crap in it.
Well, I can tell you now that that dumpster actually isn't our dumpster.
Oh,
That's
okay.
our next door neighbors.
Damn.
And that's the swingers club called Menage. That's their dumpster.
Got it. Okay. Well, there you go.
So from time to time, it's happened maybe 2 or 3 times that I can remember in the 9 years that we've been here. There will be a couch next to that dumpster, and I just wonder what has to happen to a couch to get kicked out.
Thrown out of a swingers club. Yeah, exactly.
It's got some stories to tell.
Well, when you invited me in and we were doing the tour and everything, we got into a conversation about this continued narrative coming out of entertainment media about the vinyl resurgence, which I've been hearing since I started the needle drop over 10 years ago. Since maybe even a little bit before then when I started buying records, like not so much in high school, but maybe in college. And there are still pieces about this coming again and again and again and again. And it's like the story never changes despite the fact that the reestablishment of vinyl as a physical medium of music has really kind of come back, and it is the new normal. It's no longer a resurgence anymore. And you were telling me about how sort of frustrating it is to kind of always be perceived as like the new kid on the block, despite the fact that it's here. It's kind of proven itself to the point where it's not going to disappear anytime soon. And I was hoping to have a conversation with you about what exactly you think is not contributing to vinyl's return, but rather its continued presence, and what sort of seems to see what seems to continue to add to its success and its double-digit growth every year in some cases, despite the fact that streaming is more popular than ever. It's like we're kind of living in a time where simultaneously people are enjoying maybe the most physical and most involved version of the musical experience that you can, while also enjoying the most simplistic, dumbed down, and convenient version of the musical experience at the same time, and they're just kind of successfully coexisting.
Yeah. I thought interesting today. I forget where I read it. Maybe it was in Billboard, but they talked about the new Drake record. What's it called? Rattlesnake or
It's
Scorpion?
called Scorpion.
Rattlesnake's the next one.
Clearly, you guys aren't selling that one.
An exclusive.
Yeah.
But they talked about how they did not time CDs to be available release week, and saying that's a new decision in the kind of this new paradigm of how streaming works, because it helps cut down on piracy or leaking. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, what the hell about vinyl? Vinyl's like one of the harder things to leak or have pirated. And going to the tune of saying that they expected like a first week, if they had CDs available the week of release, they expected 250,000 to sell. And whenever it did, I think CDs are coming out now, or it just come out a week ago or something like that. They expected maybe 50,000 copies to sell. That's only going to happen more and more. We've experienced it before in dealing with releases when we did the vinyl for Jay-Z's Magna Carta Holy Grail, dealing with his team. The record was announced as coming out, I guess it came out on a Tuesday back then, and we were already in agreement to do the vinyl. And so I'm asking them maybe like a week before release, like, hey, can you send me the digital file so I can get the master's cut? And they said, like, on a Tuesday, they said, are you going to have it ready for street date? I said, no, it takes longer than a week to put out a huge double LP with printed gatefold jackets and all that stuff. Surprised you guys don't know that, but okay. I said, no, it's going to take a while. I said, okay, well, if that's the case, then we'll just give you the audio after it's released. Like, to them, the week didn't even matter. And that ultimately took us, I think, 2 years to put out, with all kinds of making sure all the licenses were correct and all the proper information and all that stuff. So to me, one of the big questions keeps on coming to timing when we have drop releases, when we have surprise releases like the Carters or the Drake release, which I think we had a little bit more notice on, or the latest suite of Kanye West good music stuff. That to me is those are all totally specifically tailored for streaming. Mm-hmm. And it's not really taking into account vinyl. I think Kanye vinyl just came out today for an album that came out 2 months ago, maybe. That's actually, I mean, for being a major label, that's kind of pretty quick for turning around an LP. I will give them credit for that. So that's one angle that kind of, to me, seems to be a stumbling block or something that prevents even further or even more widespread growth or dissemination. I have no idea if that answered your question or what your question even was, but it's me talking about vinyl. That's what the folks are here to see.
Well, I think that does kind of open up another avenue, and we can come back to that question, but it does kind of open up another kind of sub-question to what I originally posed to you. I mean, in your view, to sort of see vinyl continue to succeed, in your opinion, does it even really need to kind of compete with streaming on that time level? Because it sort of seems like when fans buy into a vinyl release of something, they're kind of looking for something a little bit more of a physical experience, a slightly different sound to it as well. They're more hardcore fans who are probably, buying onto this because they're really kind of devoted to the project much more than somebody who's just kind of casually streaming it and then moving on to the next thing when that gets released in the next week or so. In your opinion, is time really even that great of a factor?
I think time is the timing of release. If you have it on release day, I think you're way more likely to engage people who aren't fans, people who are looky-loos, who that's the moment. Everyone's talking about Pusha T this week.
Sure.
Oh man, if I saw that in the store, I'd buy it. 6 weeks later, I'm already moved on to something else. People who are looking for the flavor of the moment, what's the zeitgeisty, this is what is happening right now. That's where vinyl is missing the mark. When something comes out on vinyl 2 months after the proper big lauded release, that's mainly going to the hardcore fans or the people who have been converted into hardcore fans in that time period. But I don't think anyone would think you get more sales in that regard.
Okay.
With that platform.
So, in your opinion, you're kind of seeing vinyl having this ability, or presently grabbing people who, like you said, are more of the looky-loose set, aren't necessarily just the hardcore of the hardcore fans kind of buying into it. You're saying the sales are probably too big and too wide for it just to be that focused of an amount of people.
I think so.
Yeah. To kind of maybe make my past question a bit more pointed, and force you to explain it to the best of your abilities. Listen, there are a lot of ways out there right now that people could access music. And if it was merely just about hearing the music as simply and as conveniently as possible, I mean, it's just simply streaming and that's it. And every other medium out there would be completely erased from human memory right now because there would be no reason to listen to anything else. However, as you know, that is exactly not the case. So if you could tell me, in your opinion, what exactly is vinyl bringing to the table that these other mediums aren't, that is contributing to its continued success and existence? And if you could sort of add anything to that answer, specifically as to what you guys do at Third Man to sort of, see the continued success that you do, please do.
I think for a lot of folks, there's a couple different paths that vinyl takes, and for a certain age set, it is nostalgia. This is how I fell in love with music. I remember my first stereo. I remember the records that I listened to and where I got them and where I was at my life at that point. I don't know if I've ever heard someone say, "Oh, I remember where I was the first time I streamed Yeezus." Yeah, it was. I was like, it completely eliminates a manner of memory in the grand scheme of things. So for some people it might be nostalgic, and for a younger set, it is completely foreign and completely new, and to a certain extent, a lot of folks feel like they're discovering this thing for the first time. That's kind of always been there, and it's been it's been nurtured in an underground and a small niche world that has existed outside of the mainstream for a long time. I think that's one another angle that comes at it. In terms of what we do at Third Man, in regards to keeping people's interest or getting people's interest, the front door of our spot here in Nashville says Third Man Records and Novelties. And so I always say that novelties is any tricks that we can pull to make people listen to vinyl records or buy vinyl records. We are going to employ those tricks. And when I say trick, I mean, colored vinyl is a trick. Hidden records. We hid, to go back to Jay-Z's Magna Carta Holy Grail, we hid a postcard under the back cover art that you actually had to take a razor blade and slice out, and when you pulled that postcard out, it actually had a bonus song on it called Open Letter. That's just a trick. I mean, we could have just as easily thrown a download code in that LP jacket, and folks would have been able to hear the song. But that wasn't. What's the fun in that? That's what everyone does. We're not in this to do what everyone does. We did liquid-filled records, the first commercially released liquid-filled records back in 2012. We released flexi discs by Helium Balloon. We did a record that played at 3 RPM, despite the fact that no one has a turntable that plays at 3 RPM. Things of that nature, of just trying to see what the limits of the format are. And if those are all just ways to get people to pay attention. Jack White, the owner of Third Man Records, my boss, has said before, he said, if putting, a Charlie Patton record on yellow vinyl gets some 15-year-old kid in Idaho to buy a Charlie Patton record, then by all means, we need to put it on colored vinyl. And so that's also another facet of Third Man that we operate with, which is we do a lot of things that are almost exclusively pandering towards the collector market. People who look for colored vinyl, limited editions, hard to find, all that stuff. And we tell these folks, if you are going to do that, if you're going to collect third man things, we are going to make it very difficult for you to collect. It's not going to be, oh, I just went on the website and bought it and it showed up in mail order 4 days later. That's kind of the easiest way out in terms of record collecting. We try to make as many of our things available in physical locations. Earlier this year, for example, we released Sleep, the Sciences, their first album in 20 years. And this directive actually came from the band, which was they wanted it to be a drop release, all formats. So this isn't like Kanye, it's available streaming, and then 4 weeks later it's out on CD, and then 2 weeks after that it's out on LP. No, we had streaming, CD, and vinyl all available on release date. And that came from the band wanting to do that. So no pre-announced, no hype press lead up. That release date was 4/20. Those guys are big fans of
sobriety.
April 20th.
Yeah.
But that was the best thing we could have done for that record. And it's totally a gimmick.
Yeah.
That's how no one in that world plays the game that way. That's a total hip hop move. But we got so much press without ever even trying. Like, people came to us. People wanted to write about that. And it's the day before Record Store Day, too. Everyone's already focused on whatever, the Bruce Springsteen box set they're buying or something like that. So that ultimately was extremely beneficial for us in the band in that regard. It also helped that the album was, I was just talking to someone yesterday, you know, I was happy to land on the word bulletproof. Like, I can't think of any criticism of that record that I've heard that I'd be like, oh yeah, I kind of agree. I was like, no, I've spent a lot of time with that record, and I cannot poke any holes in it.
Yeah, it's
like,
a solid album.
It really, really is. So, you know, that's a little bit of insight into, you know, things we do that that try to get people's attention, because now more than ever, everyone is putting out vinyl. And there's definitely folks that I see that have taken it beyond what we've done, or they've taken what we've, you know, that pool that we swam in and have made it even more exclusive or even more wacky or crazy in terms of, you know, more people doing liquid filled records or hand poured vinyl, things like that, which are like kind of get my eyes going wide open, which is good. I'm happy that exists out there, that there's an outlet and there's a market for that.
It just kind of goes to show that there's a lot of things that you could continue, despite the fact that maybe mainstream opinion of it might be that it's over, it's done, it's stale, it's finished, but could continue to thrive as long as you keep innovating with it, experimenting with it, and doing kind of, like you said, weird, wild, and wacky stuff with it. Because, I mean, what isn't weird, wild, and wacky until you just try it for the first time, until it becomes a bit more of an established idea? You know, another question that kind of comes off of everything that you just said here is, I mean, it seems like everything that you guys are doing with vinyl is really cool and sort of gearing things toward that more. Seems like
what you're doing is cool.
Seems like what you're doing is cool, but you guys are a business at the end of the day, and you do have a bottom line, I imagine. I mean, the facilities that you guys run out there are outstanding. So what exactly do you guys do to kind of find that balance between, hey, you know, we're making a product that's really creative, we're doing it for collectors, but we're also going to make it a little hard for people to kind of get access to that, so that they're not just like buying into it and then throwing it on eBay or some shit like that. I imagine in making those decisions, you are kind of consciously understanding that you might be getting maybe a few more sales as a result of that. No?
Very, very good question. The other side of the coin in regards to the limited editions and the scarcity and the crazy vinyl is just about everything that we press, we have available on standard black vinyl that never goes out of print.
Got it.
So if you are a music fan, are you a music fan?
Not really. I mean, I'm more of a movie guy, but I just thought I'd dabble in this interview right here.
That's what I thought. So if you're a fan and you just discovered the White Stripes today, first off, where have you been the past 21 years? Secondly, You say you want to start. I want to hear the White Stripes' first release, 7-inch single, Let's Shake Hands. The original pressing came out in 1998. Original copy maybe cost you $150. Colored vinyl, very beautiful. You can buy the black vinyl version on Third Man from our website, $6 any day of the week. Should be about the same price at any recent or at any decent independent record store. It has not been out of print since we have taken over manufacturing it in, I think, 2011. And that's exclusively for fans. So if your whole thing is, I love music, I don't care about the baseball card collecting aspect of all the vinyl editions and all that stuff, totally understand. We are still the label for you. You will always be able to find that stuff. It will always be available.
So you were speaking earlier about the stuff that you guys do, the gimmicks, as you kind of explained them to be, that kind of grab people's attention and get them into the idea of vinyl collecting again, or grabbing some of the records that you guys have pressed, and also the nostalgia factor as well. Is there anything that you would add to the explanation of vinyl's continued popularity, maybe outside of some of the experiments and colored stuff that you guys do, that might be making this medium apply to a slightly younger audience? Because obviously the nostalgia factor isn't necessarily there for somebody who's 15, who, a record from you guys might be their first introduction to Charlie Patton. What exactly in your experience is kind of attracting younger listeners to this format, and to the store again too? Because when I walked into the store, I mean, it's not like a bunch of old fogey gray-haired dudes and bespectacled record collectors are kind of just like filing through all of the shelves over there. It looked like a lot of people younger, some people even younger than me, and I'm in my early 30s. So what exactly are you guys doing to kind of outreach to a younger audience that's getting them on board with this format that, I mean, by the time I was 10, the amount of records, and I was born in 1985, like the amount of records that were being sold was so minuscule, once CDs had kind of gotten in full swing and tapes were still pretty popular. What exactly is getting younger people back through the door?
Well, I think so few are actually engaging with any physical media in any regards, whether it's books. Books are probably the physical media that younger people are dealing with the most. They're still reading books in school, but in regards to movies, when's the last time a kid held a VHS? I haven't put a DVD in probably 4 years, I would think. There is that foreign aspect to it that just is. I mean, that's not too different from what drove me to seek out and find vinyl records when I was 15 years old back in 1997. It was, this is kind of weird. This is kind of off the beaten path, off kilter, underground. For me, it was very clear very early on that as a music fan, music that I loved, so much of it was only available on vinyl. So if I was a Mudhoney fan and I wanted to hear their cover of Baby Help Me Forget, that was only on the B-side to This Gift 45. I couldn't hear it anywhere else. They never put it on CD. So I love Mudhoney. I want to hear everything they did. So it was just a matter of course that I needed to be able to listen to vinyl. Now that's not the case now. You can pull up anything ever released on YouTube. And so the being a music fan aspect is kind of removed. And it's part of it has become it's a matter of personality and how you want other people to view yourself. Whether it's I'm hip, I'm artistic, I'm, fill in the blank, whatever adjective you want to use. When you have a wall or a shelf or whatever it is of vinyl records, and someone comes into your house and sees that, that is telling people something about yourself without saying a word. Just as having a Scarface poster on your wall immediately means you are a rapper from the 2000s. in much the same manner. Now that means different things to different people, and I'm sure one cube of vinyl to a whole wall um, tells different levels of insanity. Um, but I think it is a matter of self-identification via inanimate objects. And I'm sure there's some philosophy folks or cultural anthropologists that could dive way deeper into that and explain much better than I have. But I think that is part of it.
I think it's funny that you kind of bring this up as, I guess, a driving factor. You see this being such a large factor that kind of what's bringing people back to the format is more of like vinyl as almost like a lifestyle brand.
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, it is that to some people. I wouldn't be able to tell you how many people, and I wouldn't be able to tell you that it's wrong or right. It is what it is. There's some aspect out there, or some fake fact of 20% of the records bought out there don't ever even get opened or played. And people are like, oh, how lamentable is that? How bad? And it's like, whoa, I'm not going to lament that, because we've got these people buying vinyl records because they think they're cool. That's 50% of the battle right there. If you've got a stack of them on your shelf, the impetus to actually open one up and put it on a player is so much easier to get to than trying to convince them to buy the record. The hard part is done. Someone will listen to that record at some point.
I mean, there's also something to be said, in my opinion, and this is probably just, my own personal point of view of it here. But I think there's also something to be said for, if you're actually listening to the record, the sound quality difference between a record and just a stream, or if you're listening to something off of YouTube. I mean, I can't tell you how many things that I've listened to, even if it's just a digital file or sort of signal being put onto the vinyl record, compared to just listening to it off of YouTube, the difference is night and day. Like the sound off of the internet or streaming it on some platforms that the quality of the sound isn't really that high, sometimes can sound like trash, or can change my opinion of the record entirely, because there's more clarity. There's also something to be said for it being maybe on a better sound system, or just kind of experiencing it in person as well.
It's an interesting point, because I often I've become friends and acquaintances with lots of heavy hitters of like guys with really, really serious vinyl record collections, and the idea of these massive archives, almost, of what is supposed to happen to this collection, this archive, when this person is gone or decides to be rid of it. And what comes up often, and I hear people say, oh, this belongs in a museum, this should be put together, this should be kept together. And I'm on the fence about the whole museum thing in regards to a vinyl record collection, because the pertinent information in regards to a vinyl record, the audio, the track list, the credits, anything like that, someone open the door. This phone keeps on ringing. I'm not going to deal with that again. But all that pertinent information on a vinyl record is very easily conveyed in a digital manner. So what becomes the value of the actual artifact? If you've got a one-of-a-kind record that has been transferred and has been put on a streaming service and has been all this stuff, what more is there to glean from the object? Would the world be the less if all this happened and no one knew? If someone took down the Mona Lisa tonight and replaced it with the highest quality copy possible, would anyone ever even know? What would the difference really be? Now, this isn't talking about general level consumer vinyl, your copy of Taylor Swift 1989, that's a totally different world. But I have a lot of friends who say, vinyl records they go to a museum, or they go to an archive, or they go to a library, and they just sit on the shelves and they die, and no one ever listens to them again. And people who say, I'd rather give all my records away to friends that I know would listen to them and enjoy them. I think that plays into, the points you're bringing up. in regards to, yeah, digital streaming. You can get most of the information from a vinyl record via streaming. Not all the way there. There is something in regards to the audio quality that still leaves something to be desired. But how to even, that is in the eye of the beholder. It is almost impossible to quantify.
Most certainly. I mean, I've seen there was a pretty infamous poll that they did over on NPR years and years ago, just kind of testing people's ears, having them listen to 128 versus 320 streams of a variety of songs of different genres, and basically having people listen to them, I guess, over their computers or their headphones or their systems, or wherever they were listening to them. And they found that people overall did just as good as if you were just randomly clicking which one you thought was the highest quality audio stream versus the least quality.
That's crazy. We just had this moment the other day in the office. So a couple years ago, we made White Stripes theremins. It's like little 4 AA batteries power it. It's a little tiny, maybe this big or whatever. And we're in the kitchen here, and someone was fiddling around with this theremin, which is like an old one or was broken or something. And he did something, switched a button or popped in a battery, and one of the folks in the kitchen was, and I'm like, what's going on? She's like, that noise is really, really aggravating. We're sitting there like, what noise? And it was apparently this highest of high pitches that if I took the theremin, has a built-in speaker, and held it right up to my ear, I could hear. She could hear it from 15 feet away. And we, the guy who's fixing the theremin pulled up some information online about the height of human hearing is supposedly when you're 7 years old or something like that. So all hearing tests are based against that of a standard 7-year-old, because your certain frequencies taper off as you get older.
Yeah.
So she, this woman here working, had apparently very, very acute hearing. That made me think, oh my gosh, does she hear things on records that I don't hear? Does she hear that on streaming, things that I wouldn't hear? I've done enough time on stage in loud rock bands to know that when I go to my mother-in-law's house and I'm the only person there, it's a very, very quiet, it's a very, very suburban Detroit home. My ears ring because the rest of my life I don't ever get any silence.
Yeah.
So I know my ears have some deficiency. There's some frequencies that I'm probably just missing. So it also varies a person to person, in terms of what your history is, what your hearing is, and what you're listening to.
Yeah.
It's hard to have a stock approach or solution that really reaches everyone. So you kind of just have to do the best you can and hope that it reaches.
Yeah, the amount of people who are kind of listening either with that close amount of detail or attention to the point where they've kind of conditioned themselves to where they can hear that difference, or with people like who you're talking about right there who kind of hear those different frequencies. There aren't enough of them, or it's difficult to kind of find them so that you can market to them and then kind of base your business model on them, so it's you've got to do other things. And I guess a lot of what you just said kind of made me reflect, there seems to be this ongoing conversation about sound quality and vinyl versus, CD or any kind of physical medium, and streaming, and which streaming service, obviously Tidal is known for generally having higher sound quality than some of the other services out there. It sort of made me reflect for a second on just the sound standards that people used to subject themselves to back when 78s were the standard, or cylinders or something like that, where, I mean, by today's standards, the recordings were objectively ass, and you could hear the music much better if you just went out and listened to that artist or that band perform live. But people instead preferred the convenience, even if the sound quality was so much worse, to just kind of listen through the scratchy 78 through the horn, and that was just it.
Yeah, the point to to remember about vinyl is that it is, while it is a great vessel for conveying high fidelity, audio quality, whatever that term you ascribe to, is that it is ultimately a super unstable medium. It's not bulletproof. It's not it's susceptible to heat. It's
Yeah.
susceptible to the tiniest little friction can cause a scratch that renders a distortion, or renders a click or a skip or whatever. Um, so it's kind of funny when you think of it in that regard too, of that the arguably desirable format is also the one that is the most volatile. I would say 78s are more volatile, or cylinders. Never messed with cylinders, but I've seen them crack in people's hands. So uh, it is an interesting paradox.
So let me throw one more question at you. In your opinion, you most likely don't see the medium kind of disappearing anytime soon. I'm sure you just took out a mortgage on a new house or something, so everything's going pretty good on the vinyl front over there at
Tell
Third
you
Man.
that? Did I tell you about my mortgage? Did we talk? Do you have a mortgage? Is that an apartment or a house?
This is listen. My business model is not based on vinyl. My business model is based on the internet, which I don't think is going anywhere soon. The net neutrality thing freaked me out, but I think I'm okay. I think I'm okay for right now. If it ends up falling out from under me, I'll head over there for a new job. Just let me know. But in your opinion, so since you have this certain level of stability with what you guys are doing, at least it seems like that from the outside, what are the plans going forward with continuing this medium success and keeping people interested in it? Because I mean, I feel like the initial reason for me wanting to have this conversation is what is the future of vinyl at this point, now that it is the present? And from your vantage point, where you're at, what is the answer to that question? What does it seem like?
We've been um, we've been doing a lot more of reissues and
Hmm.
licensed reissues, which is by no means new. People have been doing reissues forever.
Hmm.
But for us, in our lane, it feels like we've got it. We're in a unique position where people pay attention or purchase at a level that they might not uh, from other labels of a similar profile. So we do a 4 LP Supremes box set, rarities. That came out on CD 10 years ago.
Hmm.
That stuff has been available. You can stream all of that. But it had never been put out on vinyl. And I love Motown. I love Detroit in general. And to me, that seemed like, well, that seems right. I think our base, I think that will play well to our base. Then also to people that don't know anything about us and just love the Supremes because they're the biggest selling girl group of all time. And, when you sell 100 million records, us trying to sell a couple thousand more is a relatively more easy task. So things like Supremes, we did Muddy Waters recently. Again, Muddy Waters. A lot of these are name recognition. If people don't know, if you don't know anything about Motown, you've probably still heard the name The Supremes. If you don't know anything about blues music, you've probably still heard the name Muddy Waters. So trying to use our entry into people's consciousness as a way of like, oh, well, maybe I've never heard of Margot Price, but I've heard of the Supremes. I will buy that. Or I've never heard of Timmy's Organism, but they've got an Elvis 45 that they put out. That's pretty cool. We see it a lot in our storefront sales reports that, for the most part, the best-selling records are usually from the most recognizable names. So it's Johnny Cash, Walk the Line, which we licensed from Sun. It is Marvin Gaye, Let Your Conscience Be Your Guide, that we licensed from Tamla Motown. Supremes are up there. Elvis Presley, Jack White Seven Nation Army, which is, probably on par with all of those things, if not more well known.
Yeah, they sing it at the baseball games, right? They sing it at the soccer games.
They sing it at all of the games, Fantano.
All the games.
All the games.
It's basically "We Will Rock You" at this point.
It is. Well, I had to, with the World Cup this month, I did 2 different interviews exclusively about Seven Nation Army. But side note, I will re-mention what I mentioned in those interviews is I have struggled in talking to other music fans and other people in this world of a melody that has transcended culture, language, geography more so. People aren't chanting any lyrics; they're actually chanting a riff, and maybe short of, I don't know if people ever chanted "Smoke on the Water" at Deep Purple, but you think about that, like, okay, "Happy Birthday" is arguably the best known song in the world.
Yeah.
But it's got different lyrics in every language. It's not the melody that is responsible for "Happy Birthday" being so omnipresent. It's the fact that, every day there's tens of millions of people who...
Yeah, if it wasn't about being born, which we all are, would it really be as popular? Kind of sounds like you guys should get into the birthday song business.
But yeah, so that's my aside about Seven Nation Army. But so yeah, we're trying to have a little bit broader of a focus, while still doing weird underground small things that we know aren't going to let anyone retire on. We're still doing that, but with our profile, in the past year we've worked with U2. We did the Sleep record, which is amazing. We did Margot Price's second album. We did Josh Headley. We reissued Captain Beefheart Trout Mask Replica.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah, indeed.
I just talked about that record in my vinyl update. I don't know if you saw that. Yeah.
And you gave it 2 thumbs up? What do you give? What is your ranking?
I don't even rate the vinyls, but I did flip shit. Sorry. I don't even rate. I don't even.
You're not gonna let that be seen.
No, it'll be seen. I don't even rate the vinyl records. However, I did flip shit over. I'll say this much: the press photo, the picture that you guys put out, did not fully do the color of the record justice. The slightly kind of black opaque, and then the purple, yellow, red, blue, green splatter. Like in person, it was like, holy fucking shit, Like when I saw the image, I was like, okay, looks kind of dark, seems kind of weird, but in person, it's like.
It really, that was pressed by our plant up in Detroit, and I'm still not 100% sure how they did it. There's some new vinyl pellet colors making the rounds. But they sent us a picture of one of those first, and I saw the picture. I was like, okay, it's the same as your reaction. And when they sent it down here, I looked at it and was probably almost verbatim what you said. Holy fucking shit! And I called them up. I was like, this was just like an accident. Like there's no way you could make them all look like this. And I'm like, no, we can make them all look like that. And it just felt like we hit the lottery. Like the timing, the availability, that record. I mean, that color combo almost resembles we called it fish scale or fish slime, something like that. And I know fish scale has a completely different meaning in the hip hop world.
Yeah.
But when it came in, every single one was beautiful. We've not had a better looking colored vinyl record, I would argue, in Third Man history. And we've done some really, really cool stuff. But that one, it just felt from and every piece of that whole package, from the replica trout mask to the cover art, it just felt absolutely the best it could have been. There was no cutting corners. There was no I would have liked to do. I really felt like that was solid, like so completely solid. Could not have improved upon.
Yeah. All right.
I'm glad you didn't rank it on your.
Well, the ranking was holy fuck. That was the ranking.
I'll take that.
I guess the last thing that I'll throw your way, and I remember saying this to you in person. I was wondering if you had anything to elaborate upon it in this interview. What is your opinion of, or are you conscious of at all, what I would kind of describe as the music nerd audience, who I think in the current landscape of popular music entertainment, it's clearer than ever where they stand, where they sit, what they're listening to, what they're buying, because the Drake fans, they're on Spotify, they're streaming Drake, they're streaming artists that Drake has put onto his songs and getting into their records. As wide and as large as that world might seem to be, because there are so many people paying attention to it, it's in a lot of respects, it's very small, it's very limited, it's very much an echo chamber. And I sort of see, as obscure as kind of the average music nerd may be, in terms of buying power, in terms of just their numbers, it seems like there is a market for them, and it is in more obscure stuff. It is in music and physical mediums that allow them to connect with the past and stuff that may have influenced their favorite artists today. And I see them almost as comic book collectors, which I think is something that you alluded to earlier in the in the interview. And I don't know what I just sort of see it as interesting as kind of seeing this group of people clearer than ever, whereas before, maybe they weren't as parsed out, or maybe their existence wasn't quite as obvious, because, I mean, when you buy a CD, that CD purchase is just kind of charted or kind of marked down as one CD purchase, and you just assume that person's listening to that CD as much as the next person is. They purchased it just as the person before them did. There's no real significant difference. But somebody who is hardcore into a particular genre, a particular musical movement, a particular anything, they'll go out and they'll go that extra mile to purchase the vinyl, listen to older music. They're not just going to experience it through the convenience of a streaming platform, because of those physical experiences, because they're sort of looking to get into the record a bit more deeper than maybe other albums that their friends might be listening to. And that's the case for older artists and newer artists as well. I mean, there were people who I saw went head over heels to grab the vinyl issues of the new Frank Ocean albums, and were happy to receive them when they did, even though when you pre-ordered them, it took months and months and months and months and months for them to actually come out. And when I actually got my Endless vinyl, I mean, it sounded fantastic. I mean, it took a while, but it got here, and it was great.
His team had no idea how vinyl records work.
Oh, I absolutely believe it.
Insight. They were operating on CD timelines. Like, okay, so this is we're ready, right? This will be ready next week. Like,
yeah, especially with the etching on the other side, because there's like there's a whole etching, and I imagine that gets pretty involved as well.
It can be difficult. It can be easy too.
Yeah.
But as your point is, speaking to music fans, I feel like Third Man is in a unique position where I think we have offered such a broad spectrum in terms of genres that we've released. We've done just about everything. We've done Hank Williams to Jay-Z. That's pretty wide.
Sure.
I think for the hardcore music fans, we are on every single one of their radar.
Yeah.
Now, they might not buy everything that we do, but if you're a hardcore Elvis fan, like super hardcore Elvis fan, you know that we reissued My Happiness as first recording. If you're a deep hip hop head, you know that we did a live recording with Black Milk here in our shop here in Nashville. If you love, turn of the century garage music, you'll know that we did a live record with Quintron and Miss Pussycat. We've done enough. It's over 500 releases in 9 years. We average basically a release a week. The scope of it is so wide-reaching that in one way or another, I believe we are on every super music nerd's radar. The Paramount Records box sets. If you want to talk about the gray-haired and the old, stodgy record collectors, all of them, they are well aware of our presence. They might not give a shit that we did, the last Wolf Eyes record. That's nowhere in their world. But the Paramount sets, those were really, really important. Those won 2 Grammys. Those are really great.
Well, it seems almost as if your business model here is to try to find that one artist, one record, one recording, one kind of musical experience that you could give to the most passionate music fans within a certain subset of the culture somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Captain Beefheart, perfect example. Trout Mask Replica, that is a touchstone. That is a record that maybe a lot of people have heard of
Yeah.
and not heard. It'd been out of print on vinyl for almost 10 years by the time we reissued it. So all of that stuff, we think of our catalog oftentimes as we think of a record collection, which is we don't want to just be one thing. If you ever go to someone's house and they're just a huge rockabilly fan, and they've got all the best rockabilly records ever, that's awesome. That's great. They've committed their life to this genre. But after a while, I would kind of say, hey, do you have the Damned Machine Gun Etiquette? Like, can we listen to something else? I don't want people to say that with our record label. I don't want people to say, oh, yeah, they just do all the White Stripes stuff and nothing else. Like, no. That is far from the truth. So I want to be able to kind of have at least something for everyone. I mean, we've done, compilations of Greek folk music from the early 20th century that was only ever released on 78, some of which there's one known copy. That is beautiful, and that is important, and that maybe doesn't have a huge market, but it is something that we see the value in, the cultural value in, and have faith in our base, however wide and however disparate, that enough people will pick up on it and hear what we're trying to convey, and understand the beauty and the importance of it, that enables it to sell enough copies to keep the lights on here.
I think that kind of speaks to one last thing that I'll say here, and that's that vinyl really is kind of just another avenue to experience music, some of which you might not come across in any other context or opportunity. Because while, yes, you could theoretically say, yes, in the age of streaming, anything could be digitized, anything could be on a streaming platform, but a lot of the time, a lot of stuff just doesn't end up on there. A lot of stuff doesn't end up on there because because a label has to put it up there. Somebody has to actually take it upon themselves to invest the money into it, invest the time and effort into it, into making sure it exists on that platform. And for some music, for some songs, a lot of things, the incentive is not there.
Anytime you switch formats, so when you go from 78s to LPs, LPs 45s, LPs and 45s to 8 tracks, to cassette, to CD, to streaming, every time you make that switch, there's a bunch of stuff that doesn't make the jump with you, that stays only ever on that format. And that can be frustrating, and that can be challenging if you are trying to enjoy, think of it. Right now we're living at the time where we have the entirety of recorded audio history at your fingertips. Like, I know everyone says, oh yeah, you can stream everything, you pull up everything on YouTube. Really think about that. Think of how hard people worked and dedicated their lives to in the past to be able to find these little scraps, these little fragments of history, of recorded history. One of my favorite things to listen to, not favorite, but really made me appreciate the power of this technology that we're dealing with is, the classic, we're down here in the South, they talk about the rebel yell, which was the war cry of rebel soldiers during the Civil War. And someone had done the work, and I think there's a couple different recreations of it, but taken a recording of a Civil War veteran, which is probably in the late 1800s, doing his single rebel yell and replicating it 10,000 times in some computer program. So you could actually hear what this rebel yell would have sounded like if you were on the other side of the lines at Gettysburg or wherever. That is, to me, that is what this is all about. It is finding important whether it's cultural, whether it's musical, whether it's a combination of both, of finding those moments, those touchstones, and sharing them, and making sure that you're kind of sticking your flag in the ground so that people who are following you can be on the path and see what is inspiring you, what you think is important as a person, as a label, all of these different profiles. That's what I love about being a record label, about working at a record label.
And as a record collector, I think there's also something that can be said for just the way that this stuff kind of exists on some of these platforms, because some of the recent examples of Kanye kind of changing his recent releases, and then all of a sudden you wake up one day and, oh, whoa, this lyric isn't there, this sound isn't there, or the mix is different or something, or I guess it was a mistake with his record label. The entirety of the College Dropout is missing, you know? And now I guess it's back up, and it's been the entire time on other streaming services. You know, it never disappeared off of all of them. But when you have that physical copy of something, while, like you said, it can be volatile, you know, I wouldn't put any of my vinyl records in the oven or expose them to direct sun, but at least I know that that record's going to sound pretty much the same way when I put it back on the table. It's not going to, you know, a lyric's not going to be missing or anything like that.
Well, I mean, you actually, this a question of ownership at that point.
Sure, absolutely.
You know, and no one can, you know, no one can take that away. Really, once you own it, that is yours to fuck up however you want.
And no one else can change it either, which, you know, I think is really the point there. Because you own it, you're not going to wake up one day and your favorite record is going to be different because you've purchased a copy of it, which is always going to sound a certain way.
I just have a fear that there's going to be a sunspot or a solar flare or a meteorite. Some sort of magnetic force is going to hit the Earth, and everyone's MP3 collections are going to be wiped out.
Oh, shit.
And streaming services are going to be down. Like, I don't know if anyone's done a in-depth investigation into all that, but that is my recurring thought as I lug these very heavy, very space-consuming objects.
It's like music. It's like vinyl collecting as an avenue of musical prepperism. You know, basically, this is the equivalent of stocking 6 years worth of beans in the basement.
Do you have doomsday prep in your? Do you have like a case of water in case?
I have a chest freezer, which everything will be going bad in immediately as soon as the electromagnetic pulse knocks out all of the electrical grid. So.
My wife talks a lot about doomsday. About what does she talk? She talks about our cars during doomsday. This impending doomsday that could happen any day now. And I say, where do you think we're gonna get gas from? Like, we've got maybe 200 miles at best. Which, if I could pick 200 miles, I'd probably stay in Nashville, to be perfectly honest. You know, all that water world kind of hilarity aside, like, there's the doomsday. Yeah, I'll probably stay at the house and use the hand crank Victrola if I have my way.
All right, my guest in this interview has been Ben Blackwell of Third Man Records. Thanks for coming on, dude, and sort of highlighting all of this stuff about vinyl and being so open and talking with me about everything that we've been discussing.
It's been my pleasure.
All right, Third Man Records and any other relevant links and stuff like that will be thrown down there in the description box. Thank you guys for watching. We will catch you in the next video. Anthony Fantano, Third Man, forever.